the human body is a microbial community, and because food is the most powerful influence on any microbial community, then food becomes the most powerful medicine for the human body. And GAP's nutritional protocol is designed to bring balance and harmony into that microbial community. Plants are indigestible for the human stomach, but hydrochloric acid, pepsin, and other elements of a human stomach juice are ideal, perfect to digest animal foods. They get broken down nicely, and then that whole mixture gets passed out into several meters of intestines, where the digestive process gets completed, and these foods then absorb. Plants sit in the human stomach doing not much because they're indigestible. Then they go through the intestines, they contribute some juices, some minerals, but the bulk of what the human body is made from, plants cannot contribute. Veganism is not a diet, it is a fast. You provide a lot of cleansing for your body with all this plant matter that you're eating, but you're not feeding your body. Their brain shrinks, and that's been now confirmed with MRI scans. They don't realize how far they've gone, how they're destroying their body. Meat stock is the staple of the GAPS diet. Why? Because we want collagen, not bone broth. There are two things. There's a bone broth and there is the meat stock. Bone broth is very different. Bone broth is a poor man's meat stock.
In the health and wellness space these days, what outdated advice are you still seeing when it comes to gut health and the microbiome?
Well, it's the usual germ theory. You know, the way people think that the world is full of these tiny creatures called microbes that we can't see, and they're out there to get you. They're out there to pounce on you. So be afraid. And the mainstream medical profession works on testing and testing and testing. And of course, every test only can identify what it's designed for, what it's looking for. So it identifies this particular microbe, and then this microbe is attacked with antibiotics. And it's possible that because the test was designed to find only this particular microbe, it doesn't see all the other microbes around or all the other factors around, which probably are far more important than that particular microbe. And that's sort of a huge puzzle with many, many pieces, millions of pieces, and you found one tiny little piece, and you try to characterize the whole puzzle based on that one little piece. And that's still going on.
It sounds like there's two different parts here. One, that these microbes in the environment are trying to attack us. And then secondarily, that the testing we use is too narrow and it's not looking at the whole picture. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. The testing will always be narrow because every test is designed to find only what it's designed to find. There is no test which says, well, let's just have a look what we can see here. There is no test like that.
Okay. Knowing that we're only getting a piece of the puzzle, out of the different gut tests on the market, are any of them worthwhile to get any information?
Generally speaking, my attitude to testing is that it's very secondary and it should be used only when you know what you're looking for, and it should be used later on in the healing journey of the person. Because at the beginning, when the person comes to me, or when I teach my GAPS practitioners and GAPS coaches the same way, so that when they have their first consultation with the person, we get plenty of information simply by talking to the person and examining the person, collecting the health history of this person. And that gives us plenty of information to start working, to start healing, to start the journey. And then later on, if maybe a year later, a year and a half later, we find that there's something we're not quite getting right, there are some questions that we're not quite answering, then a practitioner can use a targeted test to get a particular piece of information. And that can be useful. But I get family after family, patient after patient coming to me with a folder full of tests that they've done. Thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds are spent, and it's completely useless. Because every test only gives you a snippet of what's going on in your body, and it's within a day or two, it's obsolete. It's not relevant anymore. So it's a waste. So to do all this testing up front that people do, and majority of people who are ill in the world are not wealthy. They're not wealthy. I would rather they spend their limited resources on something useful, such as setting up their kitchen, getting good quality food, getting the right books, and start the healing journey, rather than wasting their resources on testing, which is no use to anyone.
So you've emphasized the waste of time, waste of money aspect. Have you seen when somebody comes to you with all these test results and they use those to guide their health journey where that's even led them astray?
Absolutely. Practically everybody. Because human body is a marvelous and a very complex entity. And it functions as a whole. It functions as one entity. And very often the testing is done chasing one particular theory and one particular idea of what might be happening. And then the test confirms that. And as a result, you don't see the elephant in the room because you focused on this little fly on the back of the elephant. You don't see the elephant. You don't speak to the person. The most important thing any practitioner needs to do is to speak to the person. Let them talk. Let them give you the full history of what's happened to them from birth. Get the history of what happened to the parents, what health the mother had when she conceived this particular child, how was the pregnancy, how was the delivery, what the babyhood was like, what happened throughout the life. And it's not just the physical health we're interested in, but the mental as well, and the emotional, and all kinds of events in life are very important to know the whole thing. So when you get the full picture of what's happened, when you observe this person, when this person is telling you their story, and these people very often are so grateful because they've met so many professionals who don't have time to listen to them. They just try to act immediately and quickly on snippets of information, and that always leads you astray. You have to give the person time to talk, to open up, to unload, because people have so much in their souls, in their hearts, and nobody ever listens to them. When the person has spoken themselves out and they told you their whole story and what's happened to them, then you can see the full picture. And that picture then is complemented by what you've observed when this person was talking. Their body language, how they look, how they behave, their body shape. You know, a doctor just observing the skin of the person, the shape of the body, the body language, the way the person holds himself, the way the person speaks, the energy of the voice, the energy of the person, you can already diagnose a lot. So that information is quite enough. You don't need all this testing. That's a technocratic approach to health testing.
So somebody comes to see you, hypothetically here. You're doing these observations as they're conversing. You're getting clues when you hear their history and where they're at. How different is the treatment or GAPS nutritional protocol depending on what the symptoms are in the different elephants that you're finding?
It is different for every person. We have to adjust it for every person. That is why in my latest book, Gut and Physiology Syndrome, I'm the creator of the GAPS nutritional protocol. And GAPS stands for Gut and Psychology Syndrome and Gut and Physiology Syndrome. In the English language, they both abbreviate to the same GAPS. So the first book was focusing on the mental illnesses, on the brain, and the second focuses on the rest of the body, Gut and Physiology Syndrome. And there I describe the full spectrum of the GAPS diet. Because over the years, and GAPS now has been in existence more than 20 years. I started working with this protocol before I've written my first book, which came out in 2004. And so it's been almost 30 years now, 25 at least, that GAPS has been in existence. So we are gathering information all the time. Every patient is unique. Every person is different. And with every person, we have to adjust what we're doing. And as a result, the full spectrum of the GAPS diet has emerged. We now have the full GAPS diet, we have the GAPS introduction diet, we have the no plant GAPS diet, we have a ketogenic end, we have a GAPS fast, we have, higher carbohydrate GAPS diet, we have a whole spectrum. And every person begins in a different way and progresses in a different way. So you have to work with the person and see what's happening and adjust.
Okay, so when we get to the root of whatever symptoms this person's displaying, when you're interacting with them, and again, through their history too, do we have a common root, which relates to what I was asking before about the protocol being different? When we get down to the nuts and bolts and the foundation of where everything has built up to, symptom-wise, is there a common root there? I know a big part of your protocol, the actual foundation, is the gut. So what I'm alluding to here is if we strip everything away, is that always the focus of the treatment?
I think it should be the focus of the treatment for everybody. Because gaps, in my opinion, and of course I'm the creator of this concept, and my opinion cannot be any different, but gaps is the basis of healing from every chronic disease without exception. Why do I make this statement? Because human body is a microbial community. I've been talking about it for 30 years now. And our mainstream science now has confirmed everything we've been talking about in the alternative field, that human body is a microbial community. The figure they gave us now, that only 10% of cells in the human body are human cells. The rest are microbes. Your body is a microbial community, and there is nothing microbe-free in your body. You have microbes in your blood, in your heart, in your lungs, in your brain, in your eyes, in your abdominal cavity, in your joints, in the muscles, in the bones, everywhere there are microbial communities. But the biggest microbial community lives in the gut, in the digestive system. Why? Because the most powerful influence on any microbial community in nature is food. Where do we place our food? Into the digestive system, of course. That is why the headquarters, the government of this microbial community that your body is in the gut. Because that's where the food comes, in that area. And that gives us an enormous power. Because the human body is a microbial community, and because food is the most powerful influence on any microbial community, then food is the most powerful medicine for the human body. Nothing can come close. Nothing at all. And GAP's nutritional protocol is designed to bring balance and harmony into that microbial community. Because what is good health? Good health is harmony, balance. Every microbial community in nature functions only when there is a full balance, harmony in that microbial community, where all the creatures are present. The basis of every microbial community are fungi. The fungi create the roadwork. They grow long hyphae, long protrusions, and they create a roadwork in that microbial community, streets, lanes, cul-de-sacs, motorways. And then the smaller creatures in that microbial community build their villages, their towns, their cities, their hamlets along that roadwork. And that's what every microbial community is like. And along the roadwork of the fungal roadwork, water is delivered, nutrients are delivered, toxins are taken away, wastes are taken away. So it's a highly organized microbial community. And only when all the creatures are present in there, they all fulfill their functions. And as long as we have balance and harmony between them, the whole community works together. Trouble is, we live in a world where humanity is determined to bring disharmony and imbalance into everything in nature. Every time you take an antibiotic, you've killed a large proportion of that microbial community in your body. So the balance is gone. The harmony is gone. And the trouble is that today people are eating antibiotics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and in between. Because practically most agricultural chemicals that our industrial agriculture uses for producing food are antibiotics in their nature. And the most ubiquitous one is glyphosate, which was initially patented as a broad-spectrum antibiotic. Today, the research shows that every piece of food in a supermarket contains considerable amounts of glyphosate, including foods labeled organic. And glyphosate is a broad-spectrum antibiotic. So people are eating antibiotics all day long, particularly if you buy your foods in a supermarket. So there is no harmony anymore. There is no balance anymore in your microbial community, in your body. And what is disease? Disease is absence of harmony. It's imbalance, it's disharmony, it's cacophony. That's what disease is. GAP's nutritional protocol is designed to bring back the balance and the harmony into that microbial community. And when that happens, when you go on the GAPS nutritional protocol and when you start creating balance and harmony in your microbial community, those microbes straighten everything up in your body. No matter how far away from the digestive tract your disease might have developed, it improves, and people recover. You might have rheumatoid arthritis, you might have schizophrenia, you might have anxiety, you might have athlete's foot, you might have chronic cystitis, or you might have allergy of some sort, asthma, eczema, something like that. And you don't have digestive symptoms. But when you go onto the GAPS nutritional protocol, on the GAPS diet, those symptoms disappear. Those illnesses disappear. And we have now thousands of patients all over the world who have been through practically every chronic disease, and they have recovered. So GAPS is a global phenomenon. My first book has been translated into nearly 30 languages now. All my books are translated into many, many languages, and we have many other translations coming in. So I'm not translating these books. These are people who speak English in those countries and who read my books in English, used the protocol, recovered from various illnesses, got results, and they wanted to bring this information into their own countries. So they contact me, we give them a license, and they translate, and they publish, and they distribute this information. So that's how GAPS became a global phenomenon. It is known all over the world now.
Okay, to make sure we're all on the same page here, what you've said, in summary, is that food and antibiotics are disrupting our gut, and it all starts in the gut, but we have microbes throughout the whole body. And when we disrupt what's happening in the gut, that translates throughout the whole body, leading to disease.
Absolutely. Because it's one microbial community. Your gut flora is not separate from the rest of the body. It's one microbial community. This fungal network, you are one big mushroom in your body. The fungal network stretches all over, goes through every barrier in the body, through every tissue, through every capsule, and through every fascia in your body. And as soon as some piece of information is learned by the microbial community in the gut, it's instantly spread to the rest of the body. Instantly. We don't even understand. It's quantum, how this happens. These are quantum mechanisms. So the whole microbial community knows the whole thing. This microbial community, part of it is your immune system. We're researching, it's a fascinating area of research, and we're researching that. Maybe one day we will understand that your immune system actually is a microbial community. And many immune cells look like microbes and behave like microbes. Even if they're not part of your microbial community, they evolved from microbes over time, over eons. So the human body is a fascinating entity, and it's, we don't understand it. We only touch the tip of an iceberg of what it is and how it functions and how to work with it, how to keep it well.
So to me, it sounds like there's two aspects then. We need to protect against things like a toxic diet and the antibiotics. And then hopefully we can get into other key players when it comes to things that are disrupting the gut. And then we need to feed it and support it from the other way around.
Yes, absolutely. Human body needs food. That's a fact. Everybody knows that. That's a fact. And the food that people get, particularly in the Western world nowadays, is of such poor quality that people's bodies are made out of poor quality materials. This is industrially produced food, produced by industrial agriculture. It's if you take two people and ask them both to grow carrots, but one person needs to grow carrots for maximum profit, while another person is asked to grow carrots for maximum health benefit. These two people will go about growing these carrots in very different ways, and these will be very different carrots. So majority of what people are eating is produced by these guys, by the people who are motivated by greed, by industrial agriculture. And you need to understand that not only physically the quality of the food that they produce is very poor, because they grow it on dead soils. The soils, practically all soils in the Western world, are dead. They've been destroyed. They've been killed by industrial chemicals, by plowing, tilling, or other practices and spraying chemicals. So the nutrition for these plants that are grown in that dead soil, the soil just provides a physical matter to keep the roots in place. Nutrition doesn't come from the soil. It all comes from chemicals that are sprayed on these crops. So what kind of nutritional composition can a plant like that have? What kind of nutritional composition would animal foods have which eat these sort of plants, laced with chemicals? Very poor nutritional composition, great deficiencies in all kinds of nutrients in there, and huge amounts of chemicals. So people who live on these foods, they have their bodies made out of poor quality materials. And when your car is made out of poor quality materials, you can put the best fuel in it, it's not going to work very well. It's not going to drive very well. The same with the human body. We need to have good quality materials. And that's what the GAPS diet does. We practically rebuild the person's body out of high quality materials. Materials which are easy to digest for the human digestive system, easy to assimilate, and which build robust, healthy, beautiful body for the person.
It's quickly becoming apparent here how much trouble we're in. Taking your carrot example, where if it's grown on dead soil, then it's not going to have the nutrition we need. And then if it's been chemically propped up, we also have to deal with those toxins in our body. And if it's glyphosate, then it's killing our microbiome and having a negative impact there. Then we have to look at what we're actually eating, say a carrot versus a grass-fed, grass-finished cow, and what that's going to provide us to build our body as well. So there's so many different areas that things can go wrong when it comes to providing the proper nutrition to fuel and build the body.
Absolutely. Every chronic disease, and that has been repeated through centuries now by the most renowned doctors, the most renowned medics, that every chronic disease is caused by two things: nutritional deficiencies and toxicity. Period. Microbes have nothing to do with it. Microbes are actually our friends, which rectify the situation and cleanse the toxins out and feed us, because microbes in our gut flora produce a lot of nutrients for us, which we can't get from anywhere else, such as K2, for example. That's a major source of K2 for us, is the microbial community. The whole spectrum of B vitamins and many other nutrients are produced by our microbial community in the gut and elsewhere in the body. And another thing we need to understand about industrially produced food, that on a biophysical level, food is information. What kind of information? So when you consume food, you consume information, and your body then acts upon that information. What kind of information are you consuming when you're eating industrially processed foods? You're consuming information of greed, abuse, mistreatment, and nothing positive whatsoever. There's no love in it. What kind of information do you put into your body when you eat food that comes from a proper organic regenerative farm? I'm a regenerative farmer myself. I have a farm, and we are fully self-sufficient in food. So what kind of energy are you consuming? What kind of information are you consuming? You're consuming information of love. Our whole nature is solidified love. If you look at trees and leaves and grasses and animals and birds and insects and how it all functions, just look at the feather from a bird, how beautiful it is. And the more we look at it, and the more we look at it under the microscope, and the deeper we go, the more we marvel at how amazingly beautifully it is designed and how functional it is. It's not only beautiful, it's functional, infinitely functional. Only the energy of love can create something like that. And the same with the human body. The human body is a pinnacle of it all. It is such a magnificent, amazing creation. It's not only beautiful when it's healthy, but it's so amazingly functional and so robust and so adaptable to the environment. Only the energy of love, unconditional love, could create something like that. And that's the only energy that can give us good health and vitality and happiness and joy and the enjoyment of our lives. So we need to understand that. So when you buy food in a supermarket, what are you buying? You're buying very low vibrational energy, very, very poor, destructive information you're putting into your body. You're buying disease, in other words. That is why I recommend to all my clients and to everybody who would listen, we have to abandon supermarkets. If we want good health, we cannot continue buying foods in supermarkets. We have to find real, true, organic, regenerative farmers in the countryside and start buying food directly from them. So what I recommend to people in the cities, you go to your farmer's market, look online, look at good organizations that there are in the world, and on the farmer's market, speak to the farmers and ask them, can I visit your farm? A good farmer has nothing to hide. He'll be delighted for people to visit his farm. And then on the weekend, you just get the whole family in the car and go and have a lovely day visiting a farm. And when you're at the farm, you look around how the animals kept, how the birds kept, how the vegetables grown. Are there any bags of chemicals lying about? Are there any refrigerators full of steroids and antibiotics, which is the industrial? And in an industrial setting, they will have these big metal gates and they would not even let you in because of what they've got there, And talk to the farmer, because we human beings can feel people. We can feel the energy of the person. Look him in the eye. You will feel, can I trust this person? Is this a good person? Does this person love his land, love his animals, love his birds, love his vegetables? Then I can buy from this person. The governments in the world make the life of real organic farmers really difficult. They do not help them in any possible way. They just really interfere, while they support the industrial agriculture. All the governments are structured to support industrial farmers. So the only true organic and regenerative farmers who survive in this world are the ones who have a strong customer base. People who buy food directly from them, who come to the farm and buy it from the farm. So all it will then take for you is driving once a week outside the city to get your weekly supplies. And if you talk to your friends and family in the city and form a group, then the farmers are very happy to deliver for the whole group, to one apartment or to one house in the city. So then everybody can come to your house and pick up their bits and pieces. So you will not be buying disease then, you will be buying good health, and you will make a lot of good friends. So all it takes is just getting organized in order to get good food.
That makes a lot of sense to me, but my one pushback would be, what about somebody in a northern climate in the wintertime? I could see how that would work if you're down in Southern California, in Florida. But when it comes to plants, in the wintertime, I'm up in Ontario. There's not much growing around here. So in that case, what would you do?
Right. Let's talk about plants and let's talk about animal foods. Mother Nature gave us two groups of foods. Animal foods, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. And plants, grains, beans, vegetables, fruit, seeds, nuts, and the greenery. These two groups of foods work very differently in the human body. And we need to understand that. And the majority of people don't understand that. So let's understand it. When it comes to basic sciences, the fact is that has been discovered in the 1930s, the only creatures on our planet that can digest plant matter are microbes. Nothing else can digest plants. Only microbes, balanced microbial communities. Mother Nature used this scientific fact in creating a digestive system of a cow, or a goat, or a giraffe, or a deer, or another herbivorous animal. Mother Nature gave them several stomachs, enormous stomachs, full of microbes. A cow has 3 enormous stomachs, and this group of stomachs is called rumen in her. So the cow doesn't digest the grass herself. It's that microbial community in her rumen that does this work for her. It breaks down the hard-to-digest substances in the plants into something that the cow's body can benefit from. We human beings don't have a rumen. We have one small stomach. And our stomach, if it is healthy, produces hydrochloric acid. The acidity in your stomach can go below 2, below 1 pH when we're hungry. Very hostile environment for any microbe to survive in. That is why a human stomach should be, a healthy human stomach, should be practically sterile. Only very few microbes are hanging around there and surviving in a human stomach. Remember, only microbes can digest plant matter. That makes, because your stomach, healthy human stomach, is practically microbe-free, that means that plants are indigestible for a human digestive system, for the human stomach. But hydrochloric acid, pepsin, and other elements of a human stomach juice are ideal, perfect, to digest meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Animal foods. These foods are easy for us to digest. They get broken down nicely in the stomach, and then that whole mixture gets passed out into several meters of intestines where the digestive process gets completed, and these foods then absorb. And the only things that can absorb are things which have digested properly, got broken down properly. And that is, again, only animal foods. Meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants sit in the human stomach doing not much because they're indigestible. Then they go through the intestines, they contribute some juices, some minerals, a few vitamins, and a few cofactors. But the bulk of what the human body is made from, plants cannot contribute. And what is that bulk? The physical structure of your body. It's water, first of all. By weight, it's 70% water. By molecular count, it's 90% water, the human body. When we take water out of your body, what's left, the dry weight, is about 50-50, protein and fat. When we analyze human protein and human fat in a laboratory, we find that they are practically identical to protein and fat that we find in animal foods, in meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants have lots of proteins. The most researched one is gluten, and lots of fats. But in their biochemical structure, they are completely inappropriate for building human protein and human fat. On top of that, they're indigestible. And I say the most researched protein in plants is gluten, and the more we research gluten, the more we realize that, and certainly scientists who specialize in researching gluten are completely convinced that gluten damages everybody, whether the person is aware of it or not. Nobody can really digest it, and nobody can really survive it that well. So, plants are indigestible. They have wrong protein for the human body. They have wrong fats. They have polyunsaturated fats largely. We need a tiny amount of these polyunsaturated fatty acids for the human body. But the bulk of what the human body needs in terms of fats are animal fats. And the proportions of the various fatty acids in lamb fat and beef fat and pork fat and goose fat and duck fat and butter and fish oils are correct for building the human fat. And 50% of your dry weight is fat. Fat is not surplus to requirement. Your heart is sitting in a great big chamber of thick fat, and it's a fully saturated fat, and it is its source of energy. The heart muscle uses exclusively fat for energy, and it sits in its own store. The same with kidneys. Kidneys sit in a thick chamber made out of hard fat, and that's their energy store. And the adrenals are sitting in there as well, just above the kidney, and that's their energy store. There are only 4 cells in the human body that require glucose for energy. All other cells thrive on fats and prefer fats as a source of energy. And these fats are not vegetable oils. This is not olive oil. This is not sesame oil or any other oil. It's animal fats. So animal foods are easy for human digestive system, human stomach to digest. They absorb well. They provide correct proteins for building your protein. They provide correct fats for building your fat in your body. So the animal foods are the feeding, building foods for human bodies. Only animal foods feed us and maintain our physical structure. And you have to understand that every cell in the human body has a short life. It works very hard, it gets old, it gets worn out, it dies, it gets removed, and a new baby cell is born to replace it. So your body constantly gives birth to trillions of new baby cells. In order to do that, to maintain its physical structure, to rejuvenate, to heal any damage. So in order to produce billions and trillions of cells on a daily basis, building materials are required. These cells need to be made out of something. 70% water, 50-50 protein and fat. Only animal foods can maintain the physical structure and heal any damage in your body. So why do we eat plants at all? Plants do not feed us. They're indigestible. They have the wrong protein, the wrong fats. On top of that, plants, practically all plants, contain chemicals which are called anti-nutrients. There's a lot of research in this area, and the research continues. We're discovering new things all the time. And the most well-known ones are lectins, enzyme inhibitors, phthalates, salicylates, phenols, and other chemicals. These chemicals are particularly present in the seeds of plants. Because a seed of a plant is its baby. The plant can't run away. You see, plant is rooted in one place. It can't run away from a predator. And it wants its babies to grow. Plants don't want their babies to be eaten by animals. So they equip their babies with lots and lots of anti-nutrients, which damage the physical structure of a body of an animal that eats them. That is why, my cows taught me this lesson. If the pasture goes, if the grass is on the pasture, go to seed, my cows refuse to eat it. They just give you this dirty look and they say, point with their nose, what's this? I'm not eating this. Because they know that the seed of cereal grasses will make them ill, will cause a problem in the rumen. So, seeds. So what are grains that everybody's eating? Wheat, rice, maize, barley, all the other grains that people eat. Those are seeds. What are beans and lentils? Seeds. What are peas? Seeds. What are nuts? Seeds. They're all equipped with these anti-nutrients. So the question again is, why do we eat plants at all, human beings? If it doesn't feed, if they're indigestible and they designed to poison us and make us ill, and they don't feed the human body, so why are we eating them at all? Because plants are cleansers. They provide cleansing substances, they provide some cofactors. They don't feed your body, they don't build your body, and they go through most of your digestive system without being digested properly. And then eventually they land in your large intestine, in the bowel. And that is where the majority of the gut flora lives. That's where that is the equivalent of a cow's rumen in the human body. And what happens there in the bowel is similar to what happens in the rumen of a cow. So that microbial community then works on the plants, works on starch, works on fiber and on other substances, and produces some useful substances for us. But the difference between a cow and a human being is that in a cow, her rumen is at the beginning of her digestive system, before absorption of food happens. While in the human being, our rumen is at the end. Too late. All the absorption of food has already happened higher up there. That is why plants do not feed human beings. And my clinical experience has confirmed this to me. Some years ago, now probably 10 years now, or probably even more, I was contacted by a group of mothers who had babies, exclusively breastfed babies, a few weeks old, vomiting diarrhea, the child is losing weight, not developing, not growing, not gaining weight. Babies are supposed to gain weight quite rapidly every day. Those babies were losing weight. Doctors do testing, they find that the child is allergic to all protein on the planet. These children receive the diagnosis of FPIES, food protein-induced enterocolitis syndrome. That was a new diagnosis at that time. Nobody knew what it was. And what the doctors could suggest to these parents is that to stop breastfeeding, not give the child any protein, and put the child on an elemental formula made out of amino acids. And the original source of this formula is soya. That was a soy formula, soy-based formula. So, and these children, if they followed that protocol, developed profound physical and mental disabilities, and many of them didn't survive. They died. So at that stage in my work, my GAPS work, my experience, my clinical experience, I knew that the more the digestive system of a person, of a human being is damaged, the less that person can digest plants. Less plant matter they can tolerate, and the less plants they should be eating. So we try to put these babies on the first stage of the GAPS introduction diet, which is the gentlest, where we remove all the most damaging and the most difficult to digest substances out of the diet, and we only eat very gentle, very healing, very soothing foods. But even that stage wasn't enough, wasn't gentle enough for these babies. So the next step for me was to remove all plant matter. We've done that. The babies were put on meat stock, which we made at home, on fermented milk with kefir grains at home, on raw egg yolks, on fish stock, and we started getting results. Vomiting stopped, diarrhea stopped, children started gaining weight, started growing, started developing. And then it went on and on and on. Unfortunately, the mothers already stopped breastfeeding. The real benefits came when the parents were able to stop the formula that the doctors put them on. This soy formula, this elemental formula. All of these children were allergic and they were reacting to this formula. So that's when the real growth and the real healing started. And then these children went on and they developed beautifully and without any disabilities, mental and physical. But what we found extremely difficult with these children, introduction of plant matter. The tiniest amount of peeled, deseeded, and well-cooked and blended courgette would bring diarrhea back, vomiting back, or any other vegetable. Because starchy vegetables not allowed in the GAPS diet. We have no starch. We avoid all starchy things. So we just take the gentlest vegetables. And it took us 4, 5, 6 years with some children to introduce the tiniest amount of fermented carrot, courgette, and onion. First, we ferment it for a few months. And what does fermentation do? We ask microbes to pre-digest that vegetable for us in a jar or in a pot before we actually put it in the mouth of a child, before we consume it. And then we would ferment these vegetables. The microbes pre-digest them. They break down all the anti-nutrients. They break down fiber. They make the whole mixture much easier for human beings to digest. And then we would cook that fermented vegetable, and then we would blend it in microscopic amounts. And that's how we managed to introduce some vegetables into the diet of these children. But in the meantime, while we were trying all of that, they were entirely on a no-plant GAPS diet. That's how the no-plant GAPS diet appeared and was developed altogether. They were entirely living without eating plants at all for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. They've recovered from all their health problems. Rosy cheeks, bushy tail, bright, beautiful children in every possible way, thriving at school, good social skills, physically healthy and well, playing sports and everything else. So it's these children that demonstrated to me without a shadow of a doubt that human beings can live perfectly well without eating plants at all.
So given everything you shared there, plants are toxic on a number of levels. You shared this example with the babies. Why introduce plants at all? You mentioned the cleansing. I just want to understand how that fits in. It sounds like somebody would have to be at a certain level of health before they did that. But if they are healthy and they're thriving on only animal foods, is that cleansing piece actually necessary?
No, not at all. We now have a carnivore movement in the world, and people recover from the most severe autoimmune illnesses and neurodegenerative illnesses and hormonal illnesses, all kinds of illnesses. And I've met many of these people in carnivore movement. So they make a conscious choice not to eat plant matter at all. And they're thriving. They're very healthy, happy, these people, and they're doing very well. They don't want to introduce it. But many people do, because plants are nice. They give us colors, flavors, fun, tastes. So people would like them. People would like to have them. So if your digestive system is strong enough to handle some plant matter, then why not? Why not have this fun? Why not have these colors and flavors and nice things to add to the meat and the fish and the eggs and the dairy? But the bulk of what a human being, any human being consumes, on a daily basis should be animal foods. Or we can live entirely on animal foods without eating plants at all. And the further north you go, the colder the climate where people live, the less plant matter they need, the more they can thrive, the more meat and fat they need to cope with the cold temperatures and to thrive in that kind of environment. The further south we go, the more tropical we get, the more people can get away with less feeding and more cleansing, which means they can eat more plants and eat less of animal foods. And such cultures exist in India. I've written a book called Vegetarianism Explained, which I can show. It's right here, this book. This book explains everything to do about this dichotomy between animal foods and the plant foods. It explains why vegetarianism and veganism are not a good idea for the vast majority of humanity. So when I was writing that book, when I was working with that concept, I went to India several times and I studied Indian, because people in the West all point to India. Say, oh, they're all vegan and vegetarian and they're all right, kind of thing. So I went and studied it properly. And what I discovered, that traditional vegetarianism in India comes from poverty. It is not a choice. These people can't afford meat. And if they've grown an animal, they sell this animal to somebody wealthier, and the amount of money that they get is enough for them to buy enough rice and beans for the whole family for the whole year. So they can't afford to eat that animal themselves. But if they have a chance to eat meat or fish, they'll never say no. And they all, why do you think a cow is a sacred animal in India for these families? Because she provides them with an animal food, with milk, cheese, cream, butter, ghee, an animal food that can sustain the physical structure of a human body. That is why a cow is a sacred animal in India and has been for thousands and thousands of years. All these people, these poor families who are vegetarians, they all have ducks and chickens, and they put every egg that they can get goes into that rice and goes with those beans. So that's another animal food that can sustain a human body. And I say, whenever they get a chance to eat fish and meat, they never say no. All the Indian people who live along waterways, rivers, lakes, sea, oceans, the most important piece of food on their plate is fish. Another animal food that sustains the physical structure of the human body. Western-style veganism has arrived into India with the books of Nathan Pritihin. That was a New Yorker, a New York Jew, who in the 1930s and 40s wrote these unbelievably successful books. I'm suspicious why they were so successful. There was some interests behind who pushed this on the population of the world. And it's with those books that the veganism, Western-style veganism arrived to India, and some of them have succumbed to it. But Indians are the kind of people that take life, not so seriously, so that they do cheat. They do cheat on it. And an interesting fact that I've discovered in India, I was on an excursion and the guide was explaining something to us, and then she pointed to this group of people dressed up in particular clothes. And they said, oh, look, this is a group of Hindu pilgrims traveling across the country to their sacred sites. And part of their pilgrimage is a 41, 42-day fast. I immediately asked what kind of fast. She didn't know. So next day, I was fortunate enough to meet a group of people like that sitting on the beach. And I spoke to them. And I've asked them, I said, I understand that part of your pilgrimage is a fast. 41, 42-day fast. What kind of fast is this? Are you allowed to eat something, or do you just drink water? And they said, oh, it's very hard, very difficult, this fast, very difficult. And I said, so what is it? And they said, well, we only allowed to eat, listen to this, rice, beans, fruit, vegetables, nuts, vegetable oils, and bread. And I thought, that's the Western style veganism, vegan diet. These people for centuries, for thousands of years, considered it to be a fast, not a diet. And they would only do it for 41, 42 days, and only as part of their Hindu pilgrimage, their religious pilgrimage. And then later on, when I've researched the values of food, I've realized that indeed veganism is not a diet, it is a fast. You provide a lot of cleansing for your body with all this plant matter that you're eating, but you're not feeding your body to any degree. Fasting can be very healing, very beneficial for human health, particularly for a person who is very toxic and overweight, maybe. So these people in the first few weeks of fasting on a vegan regimen start feeling better because a cleaner body feels better than a toxic one. But then at a certain point, the body finishes cleansing and it becomes hungry and it asks to be fed. And the way the body asks to be fed, it gives you a desire for a roast chicken, for eggs and bacon, for fish, for cream, for cheese, for something like that. Trouble is, in the West, many vegans follow this regimen for political reasons, religious reasons, emotional reasons, various other reasons. They don't listen to their body. They force it to continue cleansing when the body is asking to be fed. And at that point, the body has no choice but to start cannibalizing itself, to start dismantling muscle and bone in order to feed the brain, the heart, the lungs, the liver, and other vital organs. The body goes into a survival mode. And I have seen enough vegans in my clinic. I have worked with many, many vegans and vegetarians whose muscle loss and bone loss are catastrophic. Connective tissue loss, absolutely catastrophic. So in effect, these people are eating meat. They are carnivorous. They're just not obtaining the meat from outside their bodies. They're eating their own meat in order to survive, in order for the vital organs to continue ticking on. But what happens with them, their brain shrinks, and that's been now confirmed with MRI scans. Literally, the brain matter shrinks. That is why these people become hangry. It's now a clinical term made out of two words, angry and hungry. Because the brain is starving, these people become revolutionaries. They are intolerant, they're very critical, they berate everybody who eats meat, and they become evangelical about it. And sense of humor disappears, and cognitive ability reduces, and critical thinking reduces in these people. They don't perceive the state their body's in. They don't realize how far they've gone, how they're destroying their body. They think they're perfectly healthy, and they think they're feeling perfectly well. So veganism is not a diet, it is a form of fasting. And people need to understand that, and that's what I explain in this book, Vegetarianism Explained. So we need to understand the value of animal foods and the value of plants.
Coming back to the babies there, I jumped in with a follow-up question, but I want to make sure you finish that story. What led to the no plant version of the GAPS diet?
Absolutely. Now these babies are teenagers, healthy, beautiful children, and many of them still have a very limited number of vegetables that they can tolerate. Majority of them can never tolerate fruit or nuts or anything else. They just can tolerate a few vegetables. But the bulk of what they consume are animal foods. And then I started using this no-plant GAPS diet with patients with Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, severe mental illnesses. And now I have many people who have been on a no-plant GAPS diet for many years. They are thriving and they have no intentions of introducing plants. So these people demonstrate to all of us, without a shadow of a doubt, that human beings do not need to eat plants. We don't need 5 a day, or 7 a day, or 15 a day, or whatever the latest figure is from our authorities. We don't need any of it. We don't need colors. We don't need rainbow colors. We don't need all of that. Because the animal foods provide everything we need, everything the human beings need. And indeed, the researcher Wesley Price, who traveled all around the world in the 1930s, and at that time, there were still quite a few indigenous cultures on our planet who were not touched by the Western corrupting civilization, who still lived on their authentic indigenous diets. And Wesley Price found that they were all very, very healthy. They didn't have any of the diseases of our modern civilization. And when he went north, he studied, when he went to Greenland, he went to the north of Canada, and he studied local people there. They live practically on meat and fat. Blubber is the major source of energy, and of course the winter there is very long. It can be 7-8 months a year, the winter, or longer. And there are no plants for them to eat, apart from a bit of seaweed that they can perhaps get out of the sea. That's what they can ferment and eat. But the rest of it was all meat and fish and fat. And if they had some dairy, maybe, but only animal foods. But the further south you go, the further particularly into tropics, where there are fruit available, people ate more plant matter. But even then in Africa, he found tribes such as Maasai and Samburu, where the women in the tribe grew some winter squashes, such as butternut squash. So they ate those kind of plants and they ate some fruit. While the men, particularly the warriors, lived entirely on animal foods. When he asked them, with this fruit growing around, why don't you eat fruit? And they said, no, that's a food for the cows. We don't eat fruit. So they lived entirely on meat, on fat, on fermented milk that they got, and they drank raw blood from their bulls. They would get some blood from the bulls, and that's what they thrived on. And these were some of the most healthy people that Wesley Price has found. And then he was particularly interested in trying to find healthy vegetarian cultures. So he was specifically looking for those people because that was 1930s, when Nathan Pritichin's books were booming all over America. And talking about Nathan Pritichin, he pushed himself, being a vegan for many years, and then he developed 3 forms of leukemia at once. And despite all the doctors telling him, you must start eating animal foods, you can't heal from this cancer, he refused, and he struggled, and eventually he died from this leukemia, from these cancers. And that's what I've observed as well with long-term vegans. They eventually develop neurodegenerative disease, immune system collapses, and many finish up with the cancer. Because the body's starving. They put themselves into starvation. So what Wesley Price, coming back to Wesley Price, what he found on these islands, and one particular island he describes, which is fascinating. This island had 2 groups of people. There was a great big mountain. The whole island was a great big mountain. And there were people who lived high up on that mountain. That was one tribe of people. And then there were people who lived along the seashore. So people who lived along the seashore fished. They went on their boats and they caught fish. So they were healthy, happy, thriving, beautiful people. But the people who lived in the mountains would come down very often and trade fish for fruit that they could collect in the jungle up there. And Wesley Price interviewed a fisherman on the coast in one of the villages who was in hiding. And what this fisherman has explained, he said that when these people who live up there don't get enough fish, they become so angry and so aggressive. They run down to the villages and they grab people and they eat them. They're cannibals. They become cannibals. So Wesley Price basically explained the cannibalism, where cannibalism comes from. When people get severely deficient and truly hungry, and the true hunger can only be for animal foods, when the body is truly starving. These people targeted fishermen in particular, because fishermen ate more fish than anybody else in the coast, and they considered their bodies to be particularly nourishing. So this fisherman was in hiding because he said, I've been told that they're looking for me. Those people from up there in the mountain. So that is where cannibalism comes from, the true cannibalism. And then there is research on Easter Island, for example, and other islands around the world, where people were researching something very different. They were looking at soils and how soils got destroyed on our planet through arable agriculture. And what happened on Easter Island and on some Scottish islands and Ireland, the country of Ireland and Iceland, the same thing has happened. All of these islands, thousands of years ago, were covered by a thick forest from coast to coast. And the trees on those islands, with their roots, held the soil in place. They didn't let the soil to be washed away with the rains into the sea. Then humanity, who has developed arable agriculture, when humans started growing cereal grasses, they started chopping trees down, creating fields that they would till and grow these cereal grasses on. And when they would do that, particularly when humans dig and till, they destroy the structure of the soil, because healthy soil is highly structured. It's like a sponge. It's got a structure inside it. When every time you stick a spade into that soil, you lift a piece of soil, you break it, you've broken the whole structure. The soil, the divine skin of our planet, soil, turns into a pile of dirt, basically. It turns into dust, it turns into dirt. And then the rains wash it away off the hills into the sea. So after several hundred years of arable agriculture, when people would destroy field after field, they would clear a field of forest, they would burn the forest, usually they would burn it, and then grow these crops, and for a few years the harvest will be good, and then the soil gets destroyed and gets washed away into the sea. They finish up with a field of stones, rocks basically, with very little soil left on it. So they'll clear another patch of forest, and then another patch of forest. And this went on for hundreds of years until the whole island was cleared and lost its soil. And at that point, people will start starving. And what they've discovered, these researchers on the Easter Islands, that because the Easter Island is so isolated, it's so far away from any other inhabited parts of the planet, people became cannibals. They resorted to cannibalism because they had no other food, basically. On islands where the same scenario happened, people would go, if there are other islands or other lands nearby, they would go and then they buy food elsewhere, and they will bring the food to the island. So they didn't have to resort to cannibalism. So that explained the cannibalism. And that led to another avenue that I would like to open up. And that is why humanity is eating cereal grasses. You know that majority of plant matter on the dry part of our planet, our whole planet now, are 4 plants. 4 plants that dominate the whole plant kingdom on our planet. And these are wheat, barley, rice, and maize. 4 cereal grasses. Seeds. Remember we talked about seeds? Plants equip the seeds are their babies. They equip them with anti-nutrients, with poisonous chemicals which damage the human body, damage your digestive system, your connective tissue. You get arthritis, you get migraines, you get mental illness, you get all kinds of problems in the body simply by eating seeds of plants. So looking at the indigenous cultures of pre-agricultural era, and the best examples we have, which we have a lot of information on, are Australian Aboriginals and North American native people, North American Indians, who were pre-agricultural people. They didn't do agriculture. They didn't plow, they didn't grow any grains, they didn't do anything like that. They were hunter-gatherers. How they lived, these people? And we have enough information because thankfully the first Europeans who moved to Australia and who moved to the North America, they kept diaries. It was kind of a thing to do in those days. And a lot of those diaries have survived. And now wonderful books, these diaries have been researched and wonderful books have been written. And one of the best books I would recommend for people to read is called The Dark Emu, about Australian Aboriginals. And what this book describes, and I have some other books on American Indians as well, that these people considered the whole environment, the forest, the grasslands, the animals, the birds, the insects, the microbes, the soil, part of their family. They did not put themselves aside from nature. Whatever they did, they looked after the whole family. They looked after the forest, after the grasslands, after the animals, after the birds, after the rivers, after the lakes. And that way they understood that they will be taken care of. And indeed, they were taken care of in the most beautiful way. These people had no boundaries, no borders, no countries, no, private property as such, that this is my land and that is your land or kind of, no. These people looked after the whole continent. And they knew how to look after. They did controlled burning in the forest to prevent forest fires. We now have horrendous forest fires in Australia and in America simply because nobody's looking after the forests. Nobody's burning the underbrush, the dry wood that falls down on the ground. Nobody's burning that out in a controlled way. And what Aboriginals did, they developed ways of burning grasses around their villages in such a way that the grass grows and becomes very lush. And they've landscaped the whole continent of Australia. When they were looking after Australia wasn't a desert. It was a lush grasslands and forests. The whole continent, even in the middle of Australia. Because they knew how to plant. They would plant trees higher up on the hills while keeping the slopes and the lower parts to the grasslands. If you leave it to nature, this has been observed and researched, trees usually grow at the lower parts of the hills, while the tops of the hills are left bare as a result. No, these people did the opposite, because they knew that if you plant trees higher up on the hills, the roots of those trees will hold the soil in place. Then those tops of the hills will not be bare, will not be stripped of the soil, and that will then hold that soil, and then the grasslands below will keep their soil as well. And they use controlled burning for creating lush grasslands all around their villages. As a result, large herds of kangaroo and emu would come and graze on those grasslands. And they would take one animal silently, using a spear or using a bow and arrow. So that animal would fall, and the rest of the animals don't get scared. They don't even notice. So these people will just walk right into the middle of a herd, pick up that dead animal, bring it home and eat it and consume it, while the herds continued grazing. So they didn't have to spend a lot of effort and time hunting and running around. They would just take one animal when they need one. They created fish traps in their rivers and lakes, and in such a clever and ingenious way that it didn't alter the route of the river, it didn't change the spawning, it didn't damage the fish in any possible way, but these traps would always have fish in it. So they didn't have to spend time fishing. They will just walk into the trap and pick up the fish. So as a result, these people were healthy, happy, very well fed, and they had plenty of free time. They would sing songs and dance and play sports. They had sports games and have festivals and do art, these people. They lived a beautiful life, these people, and they had a very different spirituality, these people. And then, of course, the Europeans came and destroyed these cultures. And one interesting episode that I remember I've read in one book is the first Americans who moved west with the Great Depression came to a village in California, came to a village of indigenous people on a bank of a river. And he could see the village, it was a father with two children. One was an older boy and another one is a 3-year-old. And they could see the village on the other side. And they were hungry, they were tired, and the father sort of erected a little hut or something for them to sleep in. And he tried to hunt. He tried to kill a deer with his gun. And next morning, he couldn't kill one, so they went to sleep. And next morning, when they woke up, there was a deer lying on their doorstep, freshly killed. And every day, they would have a deer lying on their doorstep, brought by the Indians from the other side of the river. And initially, he just thought how kind these people are, well, how nice. And later on, when they learned their language and they understood, the Indians did that. So he doesn't make noise with his stupid gun, because they hunt silently. He was scaring their game away. That's why they decided that it's a good idea to feed these Europeans who don't understand, who are like children and don't understand how nature works or how the world works, and make noise with their European guns. And there are some fascinating accounts. And the 3-year-old boy finished up living with these Indians because the father went off with the older boy to earn some money somewhere, and he left the boy with these Indians. And this boy grew up with them, learned their culture, and he then dictated all of his experience to a writer who wrote a wonderful book about how these people lived. So my question is, if you are well-fed, well-nourished, healthy, happy, you live in a happy environment, in a paradise, you have plenty of free time, you're doing art, you're singing songs, you're playing sports, and so on. Why would you go around grasslands and eat seeds of cereal grasses?
I'm with you. I don't see a reason.
Exactly. They don't taste good. Have you tried to chew seed of grasses, or even wheat that you've just picked out of an ear, or barley, or oats, or anything like that? They don't taste good. They're absolutely ghastly. So why would human beings do that? Why would they go around meadows collecting thousands of years these seeds, eating them, and then why would they uproot trees, clear a patch of forest to plant these seeds? I remember we tried once to scatter some rice seed as a ground cover, in our garden. Blackbirds and pigeons just followed us, picking up every seed immediately. It was a complete waste of effort, complete waste of time. So if you wanted to plant these seeds, you had to protect it from birds. And then as the seeds start to germinate, you have to protect them from rabbits and deer and other animals that would come and gladly eat all of that crop. So for the whole season, it was the job of children in history to burn fires around these wheat fields, sleep there, live there 24 hours a day, and chase away the rabbits and the deer and the birds, to protect the crop for the whole growing season. And then you have to harvest it, which by hand, which is very hard work. And then you have to separate the chaff from the grain, which is very hard work too. And then you have to find a way of storing that grain so rats and insects and people don't steal it. And then you have to do the daily grind, where you have to grind 2 stones against each other with that grain in between to make flour. And then you have to make the dough and bake a loaf of bread. All that work for a loaf of bread. For a person who's not hungry, who's got plenty of other things to do. Why would humanity start growing cereal grasses? What happened thousands of years ago? Today we have an answer to this question. They're addictive. Wheat is highly addictive. Oats are highly addictive. Barley, rice, maize, highly addictive. Then there's sugar, which is even more addictive. Then there are potatoes, which are even more addictive. The whole humanity got addicted to these plants. And they behaved like any real addict, real drug addict. If a drug addict, if you give money to a drug addict or an alcoholic, he might have not had a decent meal for weeks, but he's not going to buy food with that money. He's going to go and get the drug or get the alcohol. Such is the nature of addiction. Humanity got addicted. Somebody possibly tried it, got addicted, and then lured others to try it, and that's how it built up. And then humanity spent thousands and thousands of years perfecting their ability to produce their drug, cereal grasses. And then the British, of course, addicted the whole humanity to sugar. It was the British, their achievement. And then the potatoes came in after that. The whole humanity is a drug addict. When humanity has discovered crude oil and learned how to use it and started building big machines and started producing petrol and diesel and to drive these machines, now humanity has perfected production of colossal amounts of their drug. Wheat, barley, rice, maize, potatoes, and sugarcane and sugar beet. The whole humanity is a drug addict. Add to that glyphosate and antibiotics when the gut flora of a person gets damaged. And when the gut flora gets damaged, then fungi proliferate in the digestive tract and everywhere else in the human body. The person gets a fungal infection. And what do fungi do with wheat, rice, maize, barley, potatoes, and sugar? They have a process called alcoholic fermentation. They convert these things into alcohol. So the person, and it's been described, researched, it's called an autobrewery syndrome. We now have a large amount of scientific data to show that this is a reality. So these people are not only become addicted to the drugs from these plants, they become alcoholics, low-grade alcoholics. Small children, tiny children become alcoholics. Toddlers become alcoholics. How does this addiction work? I've described the autobrewery syndrome, but let's talk about the wheat and rice and maize and barley. When you feed your gut flora with these grains, The gut flora converts it into many, many different chemicals, but part of these chemicals it makes in a form of endorphins and morphines, which absorb, get into your brain, and turn the brain into a drug addict. So the brain wants more. So the brain starts dictating to me, oh, I don't want proper meals. I want pasta. I want croissants. I want baguettes. I want cakes. I want biscuits. I want soft drinks. I want breakfast cereal. I want sweets. I want French fries. The whole humanity is a drug addict and an alcoholic, Chubut. Humanity is now destroying the planet through growing its drugs, because the most destructive activity of humanity on this planet is arable agriculture, industrial arable agriculture. Remember, I started talking about soil. Soil is highly structured, healthy soil. It has fungi in it called mycorrhiza. This mycorrhiza grows long, hundreds of meters long hyphae, and the end of each hyphae attaches itself to the end of the hair roots of every plant in the area, of trees and grasses and bushes, bringing nutrients and bringing water from a much larger area, taking away toxins. Every plant on the planet, the whole planet is covered in a blanket of mycorrhizal blanket. And this mycorrhiza is also the original World Wide Web. It transfers information from tree to tree, from plant to plant. You know, a tree in Britain might be talking to a tree in Australia through this mycorrhizal blanket. They exchange information. It's amazing. The research is quite limited in that area, but we do get, there's more and more research coming in. And then along that mycorrhizal network, bacteria, viruses, archaea, and other creatures create their little villages and towns. So it's like a complex city with streets, roads, lanes, gas supply, electricity supply, sewage, water supply. If you stick a spade into that, or you plow it, you lift a piece of soil and you break it, you've destroyed the whole city. You've damaged the microbial community. And that's what arable agriculture does. They keep plowing, they keep tilling, and then they spray it with chemicals. Vast majority of arable lands all over the Western world, and not only the Western world now, because the Western arable agriculture methods are being spread all over the world now. They've been adopted in the third world countries and everywhere else. The soils are dead. And once the soil loses its structure and loses its microbial community, it turns into dead dust, dead dirt. Rains wash that soil off the fields into streams and rivers. That is why in the Western world, when it rains and you look at the river runs brown. Natural proper river in a rainy day is supposed to run clear, crystal clear. They run brown. Why is it brown? This is the soil being washed off the fields into the river. And then the river delivers that soil into the sea and dumps it in the sea. That's how humanity has already stripped majority of soils, topsoil, off the surface of the planet, of the dry lands of the planet.
As you describe that, it sounds like what you described earlier with the human gut. Our gut sounds like a microcosm for what you just explained.
Exactly the same thing is happening in the human gut. We are turning every desert on our planet is created by arable agriculture. Sahara Desert in Africa was created by Romans growing wheat for their slaves. The patricians in Rome ate meat and veg themselves. They didn't eat bread. But bread in circuses was for the slaves. To feed their slaves, they needed wheat. That is why they've colonized the whole of North Africa, plowed it, and grew wheat for hundreds of years until they've stripped all the soil, and the whole of North Africa turned into a Sahara Desert. Gobi Desert, the desert of Australia, all deserts of the world have been created by arable agriculture. Middle East, the whole Middle East. You know, there are stories of humanity originating in Mesopotamia between Tigris and Euphrates, between the two rivers, which was a highly fertile, beautiful, lush land. And that is the modern Iraq. Modern Iraq is a desert. Because people grew wheat and barley in Mesopotamia, they've stripped all the soils, they've destroyed the soils, and turned that lush land into a desert. Now large parts of USA is turning into deserts because of arable agriculture. because of what these industrial arable machines are doing. Why is humanity turning the whole planet into deserts? Because humanity is a drug addict to feed its addiction. The politicians and the governments are telling us, oh, we must feed the world. And for that, there's no choice but to grow wheat or rice or maize. I've already explained that wheat, rice, maize, potatoes, sugar do not feed the human body. They poison it and they cause every chronic disease. They're indigestible. They cannot feed your body. So this political lie must stop. All this arable, growing all these grains and all these potatoes and sugarcane and sugar beet is not feeding the world. It's poisoning the world and maintaining a drug addiction. That is all it's doing. If we want to feed poor populations in the world, we need to turn 90%, 99% of all arable fields on our planet to pasture, put large herds of animals on them, cows, sheep, goats, pigs, deer, chickens, turkeys, and start feeding those populations with food that truly feed and build the human body. And that is meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. That is the real solution. And if we do that, the regenerative agriculture that I practice on my farm has all the ways. It's figured it all out already. It's researched the whole thing. We know how to reverse the damage on the planet. We know how to create soil quite rapidly, quite quickly. We know how to recreate. We know how to green all the deserts. We can reverse Sahara. We can turn Sahara Desert back into beautiful, lush grasslands and forests. Every desert can be turned. We know how to do that. We already worked it out. Books are written about this. Guidance is written about this. It's all over internet. There are wonderful projects all over the world. How to reverse deserts, how to green pastures, how to recreate soil. We can do that. But the problem is political. The problem is not in the knowledge. So if we've done that, if the whole humanity got a will to stop the arable agriculture, stop the drug addiction, and convert arable lands back to pasture and start producing animal foods, nobody will be starving. People will be truly fed by foods that will truly feed them and build their bodies and make them healthy and happy.
And the good news is, again, microcosm, we can do the same thing with our guts.
Exactly. In many people that I've seen and in many people in the West, their gut is a desert. It's a Sahara desert. Because what is your microbiome on the surface of your gut lining? Every microbe produces sticky substances to make a little home for itself. Every creature in this world tries to make a little home, a little shelter for itself. Nobody wants to live in the open. And the microbes are the same. So all these sticky substances get mixed up together and they form a so-called biofilm. What is soil? Soil is a biofilm. And if we take a microscopic picture of the gut lining of a human being, a healthy gut lining of a human being, and then compare it to a photograph of a soil with plants sitting in it, with the roots of the plants in the soil and the plant above the ground, the picture is almost identical. The gut lining of a human being has finger-like protrusions, very long ones called villi, and every villus has hair-like protrusions called microvilli, and then every microvillus is covered by even more microscopic hairs called glycocalyx. And the whole thing, so they look like plants. They look like plants above the ground. And the whole thing is sitting in a dirty-looking brownish sticky substance, which looks like soil. And that is the biofilm that every microbe produces. So your gut lining is covered in soil. And it has these rich grasslands and forests growing on it, with all kinds of creatures living in there. And that's how it's supposed to be. Only then you'll be healthy and happy. But people, through taking glyphosate and buying their food in supermarkets and eating commodity crops, maintaining their addiction to commodity crops, they strip all those grasslands and forests in their gut and turn them into deserts.
Well, I want to make a connection here too, where it seems like the problem with agriculture, where we've formed these deserts, is growing plants the way we do. And then eating the plants is creating the gut disruption and the desert-like end stage in there as well.
This is one of the universal laws. This world has been created by a colossal intelligence. You can call it the grand creator, you can call it the big spirit, or you can call it God, whatever you want to call it. But this world has been created because of the intelligence that has been put into the whole thing. And the grand creator has laid certain rules and laws how the whole thing functions. And the whole world, the whole galaxies obey these rules, apart from a two-legged creature called man who doesn't even know about their existence. And one of these laws is, as without, so within. As up, so is down. So what we're doing outside our bodies with our arable industrial agriculture, we're repeating what's within us. The picture is exactly the same.
Okay, I want some clarification still on the use of plants. You mentioned vegans can have a period of time when they start that diet where they can do okay before their health starts to degrade. We've also said that they can be used as part of a healthy diet for cleansing. Why don't we use you as an example, somebody that's healed their body? How do you go about using plants day in, day out as a healthy cleanse?
Plants need to be properly prepared in order for the human digestive system to handle them appropriately so they don't damage us. GAPS diet excludes seeds. We do not have grains. We do not eat potatoes. We do not eat sugar. We eat nuts, but nuts and oily seeds such as sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, and sesame seeds are properly prepared. The best way to prepare plant matter is fermentation. Human beings for thousands of years have been looking for a way of preparing plants in a way to make them a little bit more feeding. So they've understood through experience that microbes are the only way to go, because microbes are the only creatures that can digest plant matter. So people would ferment plants, basically asking microbes to digest that plant for them before they eat it themselves. So what happens during fermentation? The plant gets pre-digested. All the difficult to digest substances get broken down into something easier to digest for the human digestive system. Anti-nutrients get destroyed. All these lectins, enzyme inhibitors, and phthalates and salicylates and all the other damaging substances get destroyed in there. And nutrients get released into the juices and into the mixture. They become bioavailable. And I'll give you a simple example. A helping of sauerkraut, fermented cabbage, will provide your body with 20 times more bioavailable vitamin C than the same helping of fresh cabbage. Because in a fresh cabbage, vitamin C is locked in the cellular structure of cabbage, and the human digestive system can't extract it. While in the fermented cabbage, microbes have done the work. They've extracted all that vitamin C and put it in the juice. It's bioavailable. That is why fermented vegetables, particularly home-fermented vegetables, are the best vitamin C supplements in the world and the cheapest. And when people used to live the way we live on our farm, when you get your harvest of cabbages, if you don't do something with them immediately, they just wilt and die and mold, and you'll be left without cabbage for the whole year until next September. And cabbage takes 8 months to grow, I'll tell you. It's a lot of hard work. You don't want to waste your cabbage after you've grown your harvest. So we make sauerkraut. We ferment all of our vegetables, all our surplus vegetables that we have, we ferment. And sauerkraut, fermented cabbage, keeps for 6 years, 7 years, getting better and better. And we then add it into our soups and stews, and we eat it all year round until the next harvest. So we have fresh cabbage only in September, when the cabbages are ripe, only for a few weeks. And then for the rest of the year, we consume cabbage in a fermented form. All human beings used to live like that, because supermarkets are a fairly recent invention, where you can get cherries in January, strawberries in December from Chile or whatever, That is not normal for human beings. Foods used to be seasonal because people produced their own food. So for 11 months and a half of the year, cabbage was consumed only in a fermented form. Fresh cabbage was available only for a couple of weeks in September when you're harvesting it. So people for more than 11 months of a year were getting plenty of vitamin C, pre-digested cabbage, And every food was like that. The same with carrots, the same with beetroot, the same with radishes, the same with meats. Because when you killed an animal, and if you're not able to eat the whole animal at once, within a few days, it will rot. You have to do something with it. So people used salt to preserve the meat. They would make sausages and they will make ham and salami and salumi, and there are lots of different wonderful recipes that people have developed. And once you've salted that meat, it'll keep for a long, long time. And what is salted meat? It's pre-digested meat. It's fermented meat. Because every animal, just like a human body, is a microbial community. So when you hang it, when you've salted it, the purpose of the salt is to suppress putrefactive bacteria, suppress the rotting microbes. While the microbiome that's already in the meat, already in the body of that animal, starts producing lactic acid and starts pre-digesting that meat and preserving it. And it's the lactic acid that preserves it for you. And they pre-digest because meat contains its own form of starch called glycogen. It's a very similar molecule and it's structured to starch that you get from potatoes and grains. And so these microbes then, these bacteria in particular, they break all that starch up and turn it into lactic acid. And during the process of eating up the starch, eating the glycogen during fermentation, they would produce a lot of enzymes which then pre-digest that meat for you. That is why eating pork that has been salted and fermented that way is far more beneficial for human beings, and beef, and goat, and lamb, and any other meat. Koreans always marinate their meats, and traditionally they marinated it in kimchi. They would mix the meat with kimchi and leave it for a few hours. So the microbes and the lactic acid from kimchi, because kimchi is a fermented vegetable, would pre-digest the meat for them. And only then they will cook it and eat it. So human beings used to consume on a daily basis, the whole year round, majority of their food in a fermented form. Because fermentation preserves food for a long, long time. It stores food for you and preserves it for a long time. And because all foods were seasonal and they were not available every day, you could not just pop around to a corner shop and get anything you like. You had to grow an animal and kill an animal and then preserve the animal, and then you would be eating that animal for a few months before another animal might be available to you. And the same with vegetables and the same with anything else. So people learn through experience that fermenting foods, and anything can be fermented. Chinese ferment eggs in their shells, and it turns into a substance that looks like a blue cheese, apparently very, very nourishing. So anything and everything can be fermented. And people found that through fermentation, they can preserve food for long periods of time, neutralize anti-nutrients in plants, and make the food far more digestible and far more nourishing and feeding. So through fermentation, plants can become a little bit more feeding, not just cleansing. Okay, so that's how people started eating plant matter.
You gave a number of great benefits there of fermented foods. One thing you didn't mention, which a lot of people do that are more conventional, is that when they have these foods that have bacteria on them and in them at that point after they've been fermented, if they haven't been pasteurized, they're getting that bacteria in the GI tract.
Absolutely. Fermented foods are probiotic foods. You're getting natural probiotics. And, in Europe, people traditionally fermented dairy. They made cheese. Cheese is a big culture in Europe. And the butter was always made from sour cream. So the butter was cultured, not fresh butter, because fresh butter is difficult to make, while cultured butter is very easy to make. You can make it by hand. You don't need a machine for that. So people always had their butter, which was cultured, and their cream was cultured, and they ate cheese. So most dairy was consumed in a fermented form. And the same with meats, because most meats were preserved with salt. So they were fermented. Majority of everything people put in their mouths were fermented foods for thousands and thousands of years. So people ate pre-digested foods and probiotic foods, and foods teeming with enzymes as well, because fermentation produces a lot of enzymes, which then rejuvenate your body, help you to digest your meal, and do all sorts of other good things for you.
So the part I was digging for, though, these bacteria that are on the food, they'll actually seed in our large intestine?
Some of them would do, but your microbial community that's already there, the resident, is balanced in a healthy person. Is balanced. It would not let anything in. Normally, it will push them away. But those extraneous bacteria that came with fermented foods and went through the digestive system, they would stimulate your immune system. They would create the right pH in the digestive tract and give more nourishment to the body. And perhaps there was some exchange. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure there was. Because microbes have a free market of genetics. They throw their genes into the environment and they pick up genes of others. So I'm sure there was a genetic exchange going on. That's just a thought that came to me now, and it hasn't been researched yet.
Okay, I would assume it would be similar then for a probiotic supplement?
No.
Okay, so any value there in your mind?
Probiotic supplements, practically 100% of them are species of bacteria that are grown in a laboratory. By definition, they are single strains, grown in artificial environment. They are weak. Nature doesn't do that. It doesn't do monocultures. Nature grows everything in a mixture, in a balanced community. If you look at a natural meadow, can you see a monoculture of the same grass with no other plants there? Only humans do that. Only humans create monocultures. Monocultures are unsustainable and the nature abhors monocultures. So what is a probiotic in a capsule? It's a monoculture. There are some people put together a few monocultures there. It does have a clinical effect in a person whose gut flora is very deficient, as it stimulates the immune system and it stimulates. We still don't have research to really demonstrate that they colonize, that they really settle in the digestive system. But when you introduce, what I find far more beneficial is to introduce a balanced microbial community as a probiotic into the digestive system of a person. And that is kefir, the best probiotic in the world. And kefir doesn't come from humanity. Humans didn't make it. It's thousands of years old. Nobody knows where it came from. Muslim people believe that it was given to them by Prophet Muhammad, by God himself, and that's how it spread. The kefir grains they look like cauliflower florets, and it's a biofilm with a balanced microbial community. And there are more than 200 species of microbes in there. The basis of it are fungi, then there are bacteria, there are viruses, there are archaea, and all kinds of creatures there, living in a balanced microbial community. And when you drink kefir, homemade kefir, live, it's very easy to make, very simple. There are instructions online, and you can get the kefir grains online. So I recommend to everybody to get it and invest time into that. So when you drink a glass of that kefir every day, you're putting a balanced microbial community, which will stimulate your immune system, interact with your damaged microbiome, and straighten it up. It is one of the best, clinically, the best probiotics that I know of.
Okay, you mentioned making it at home. What about store-bought? Any value in kefir that you buy at the store, yogurts you buy at the store, and then most of them, or if not all, are pasteurized. So is there anything actually left bacteria and microbe-wise at that point?
If it's pasteurized, it's dead. It's killed.
I guess they could pasteurize and then they could ferment, though. If they pasteurized like the dairy to start and then did the fermentation after.
If milk is pasteurized, you can then add kefir grains into it and put some life back into it. But it still will be a second-rate kefir. The best kefir is made from raw milk. Raw milk from a pastured animal and an animal that is natural. You know that in the 60s, Dutch scientists have developed new breeds of cows, commercial breeds of cows, which can produce 3 times more milk than a natural cow is able to produce per day. These are large black and white animals called Holstein Friesian cows. And the way the scientists have done it, they've selected animals with a brain tumor, with a pituitary adenoma, which produced too much growth hormone. And because of that excessive growth hormone, the cow was producing more milk. So they bred from these sick animals, and they created this Frankenstein cow. She gives Frankenstein milk. And majority of dairy products in our supermarkets come from these Frankenstein cows. These are sick animals. 75% of them, according to research, have mastitis at any time. So a lot of pus goes into the milk, so the milk has to be pasteurized. At the age of 3, many of them already become infertile, and then they develop cancers, arthritis, they live very short life, and they're just killed. So how can you get good health from drinking milk from an animal like that, which is artificial? And these Frankenstein cows don't survive on grass. Grass is not enough for them. A natural cow lives on grass. She has to have soya. She has to have all kinds of feeds made for her specifically. Only humans can support an artificial animal like that. I have a stack full of scientific papers that thick, demonstrating that this Frankenstein milk causes every disease under the sun. Cancer, infertility, autoimmunity, allergies, anything. Anything you like. Mother Nature didn't give us these animals. Mother Nature gave us Jersey cows. She gave us South American cows, Asian cows, natural breeds of cows, which have to be on pasture. Their main food is grass and trees and other vegetation and bushes. They need more than just grass. We want silvo pastures nowadays, not just grass. Silvo is a Latin word for forest, so it's a forested pasture, because animals need to eat trees as well as grasses. It's very important for them. A cow like that will give you 10 liters of milk per day. She can't give you any more. It's very rare that she can give a little bit more. But it's real milk. And that milk, if the animal is healthy and you don't contaminate the milk after it left the cow, if you do things in a clean way, if your utensils are clean and your hands are clean and you wash the udder before you milk the cow, if you don't contaminate it, that is the healthiest food. And it's a probiotic food, because the body of a cow has its own microbiome. Her blood has its own microbiome. And what is milk? Milk is the white blood of the animal, with red blood cells removed and some other elements removed. But it's mainly, it's alive. It's a living substance. It's got alive and active immune cells, white blood cells, active hormones, active neurotransmitters, active enzymes, active microbiome, because the blood of any animal has its own microbial community. And all of that comes out of a gland of a cow. And it's a health-giving food. It's beautiful food, particularly when it comes from a natural breed of cow on organic, real pasture, under the sunlight. And on top of that, there is a living force coming with that milk, because everything in this world is spiritual. You're a spirit. A cow is a spirit. There is a living force in that milk. When you pasteurize that milk, you kill it. All the cells get killed, hormones destroyed, enzymes destroyed, microbes destroyed. It's a dead substance that you drink, you put into your body, and your body has to work hard to get rid of it, to deal with it. One thing that happens to everybody if they start consuming pasteurized dairy products is lactose intolerance. Because in the raw milk, every molecule of lactose, milk sugar, is accompanied by an enzyme called lactase to digest that lactose. Guess what? Pasteurization destroys lactase. So you're drinking milk full of lactose and there is no lactase, and your digestive system is not producing it. So you suddenly get bloating and gas and indigestion and all kinds of symptoms. You become lactose intolerant. Switch to raw milk. And in very large percent of people, lactose intolerance disappears because they start consuming lactase together with lactose. That's just one factor. There's lots and lots of other factors. Pasteurization of milk is a terrible, terrible thing to do if it's real milk. But if it's a Frankenstein milk, it's already harmful and damaging substance and full of pus. You have to pasteurize that. You can poison yourself. There was a very interesting experiment done where they've taken 2 jugs of milk, pasteurized and raw, natural raw milk from organic cows, and they introduced salmonella and E. coli into both. In raw milk, these microbes died within minutes, literally. They were not identifiable anymore because the microbiome of that milk simply killed them. But in a pasteurized milk, they thrived. And they spoil the milk and make the milk poisonous, very damaging. So drinking raw milk is much safer than drinking pasteurized milk. But you have to drink it from a proper, real, natural animal on natural organic pasture under the sunlight, coming from a good organic farm.
Okay, so throughout our conversation here, we're piecing together the diet. Kefir is good when it's of good quality. We've talked about plants, the problems there, which are numerous. The power of animal foods, which again, we want quality, but those are great. Let's talk about meat stock, because this is another big piece of the GAPS nutrition plan and a way to help heal the gut.
Absolutely. Meat stock is the staple of the GAPS diet. Why? Because we want collagen. Not bone broth, please. People are confused in the world. There are two things. There's the bone broth and there is the meat stock. In the GAPS protocol, we make meat stock. What is meat stock? You take a chunk of animal without removing anything out of it. You know, a leg of a lamb or a leg of a pork, pig, or a feet of the pig or a whole head of the pig with the skin on and the bone inside and everything else. Nothing's removed. You put it in a pan, you fill it up with water, you add some salt and pepper, and you cook it for a few hours until the meat becomes soft and it falls off the bone. And the liquid that results from it is called meat stock. It's clear, it's delicious, you can drink it as it is, you can add some vegetables into it and make soup from it, you can chop up that meat from that you made it with and return it into the soup, and that makes a meal in itself, and that is the GAPS soup. When you say the word soup to people in the Western world, they see something from a tin that you microwave made with water. That is not soup, that's an abomination. The real soup that people used to eat for thousands of years is what I've just described. And why do we want that? Because, you know, I'm a farmer. I love my animals. And when we slaughter an animal, the least I can do is not to waste any morsel of it. There's only so many kilograms of pure muscle mass that people call meat. Because in the Western world, when you say the word meat, people see steak. Without fat, without anything, that you do 3 minutes on each side, medium rare, whatever. That's what they see. When you say the word meat in a traditional society, they see the whole animal. And that's how I see it. And the majority of the carcass of the animal is connective tissue. It's tough. You can't chew it without thorough cooking, without cooking it for a few hours in water. You can't do it on 3 minutes on each side. You know? It's fascia, it's ligaments, it's capsules, it's bones, it's joints. You know, it's organs, it's bone marrow, it's the whole thing. So people lived close to nature. People had farms for thousands of years. So when they would slaughter their animal, they could not just take a few kilograms of fillet steak and throw the rest away. No. They would take a chunk of animal. And what is the majority of the body of this animal is made of? It's made out of a protein called collagen. That's the connective tissue. And that's what the majority of your body is made of. Collagen, exactly the same molecule. All your fascia, your ligaments, capsules of your joints, capsules of your organs, capsules of your muscles, you know, all the supporting structures. What holds your body together are these structures made out of this tough, elastic protein called collagen. There are some other proteins there as well in a smaller proportion, such as elastin and some other proteins, but majority of it is collagen. And remember, your body renews itself all the time. Cells die, they get renewed. So in order to maintain the physical structure of your body, and because 3/4 of all protein in your body is collagen, you need to keep piling collagen in. Where do you get that collagen from? From that meat stock, from that soup, because majority of meats that people ate were made as a soup. They would take a chunk of animal, they would boil it, they would drink the stock, they will make soup with that stock, and they will eat every morsel of that gelatinous, collagenous meats on the bone. And then they would bang the bone marrow out of the bone and eat that as well. And they will eat the organs as well. So people consumed collagen in large amounts on a daily basis. for all of our existence on our planet until the last few decades, when people separated themselves from nature, started living in cities, buying food in supermarkets wrapped up in plastic. They don't even know where it's coming from, and what animal it comes from. And people started thinking that meat is just fillet steak. It's just pure muscle with nothing else. Eating pure muscle without fat is actually not good for us. That's been proven. You have to have, for every mouthful of muscle that you eat of the animal, you have to have the same mouthful of fat. You must eat these two together. Only then it will do you good. Because remember, your body is 50-50, protein and fat. The dry weight of your body, the dry part of your body. You have to have both, and they have to come together. And when we eat an animal, we have to eat everything from that animal, every little bit of it. And majority of it is collagen. And that is what meat stock will provide us with. Bone broth is very different. Bone broth is a poor man's meat stock. This was, for, again, millennia. People will collect bones that were left from their meals that were already stripped off completely. They were cooked, stripped off, and they just thought, what can we do with these bones? It's a pity to throw them away, because they don't even decay, these bones. So they will put them in the pot, they will fill it with water, and they would add something acidic to it. A whole lemon squeezed in it would work, or some vinegar added into that water. And that acidity will leach calcium out of the bones when they cook and cook and cook for days and days, for a week. You just cook and cook and cook those bones until the acidity in the water leaches all the calcium out to the point that you can crush that bone with your hand. It becomes soft. You can give it to chickens, you can give it to the dog. Pigs will eat it with pleasure, And the stock that results from that is very rich in minerals and amino acids. But it doesn't have much collagen in it. We want collagen in the GAPS nutrition protocol. Another problem with bone broth is that it's very rich in glutamic acid, which is an excitotoxin, and that can cause a lot of problems for people who have any mental problems. And even people who don't have mental problems might get it. And also glutamic acid might be a problem for people who have allergies and who have histamine responses and mast cell activation disorder and some other problems. So we don't recommend bone broth for at least 2 years for GAPS people. You can accumulate your bones that were left from your meals in the freezer and then start making the bone broth after you've healed your gut and healed your body and you feel well, and you don't want to waste this wonderful resource, the bones.
How do you feel about collagen supplements? High quality, obviously. Any value? You're shaking your head no.
They are processed. They're industrially processed. They're damaged. And no matter what manufacturer tells you, from my clinical perspective, a bowl of soup a day will work much better than any supplement. Eat a bowl of soup every day. And in a bowl of good soup, good stock, that after you've made it, when you put it in the fridge, it sets as a jelly. It becomes solid. Literally, you can pick it with a fork and eat it like, a piece of something solid. That's how, in a helping of that soup, in a bowl of that soup, you'll get probably 2 bottles of that supplement for pennies. It's the cheapest way to supplement yourself with collagen, and you're getting the best collagen.
You mentioned a few hours when we're making the meat stock. You did mention bringing it to a boil. What temp will you cook that throughout that 3 hours?
You bring it up to boil, then cover it with a lid and reduce to a minimum so it simmers.
Got it. So simmering. Okay.
That's right. Depending on what kind of stove you're using. I would use conventional stoves. I would never use microwaves. You're destroying the food on a fundamental level. Microwaves cause cancer. They turn food cancerous. And I would not use induction stoves either. I would use traditional stoves.
For somebody that's going to give this meat stock a go, myself included, this will be new to me. What animal would you recommend for a first go?
If you like pork, start with pig's feet or pork hock. The lower part of the leg of the pig. Just put it in a pan, cover it with water so it just covers the water. Salt, pepper. You can put a whole onion there if you want. and leave it there for about 3-4 hours until the meat is soft. It'll be beautiful. Or a whole chicken, put a whole chicken, and you want chicken feet, if you can get them, and giblets as well to put in there. That chicken cooks in a couple of hours.
I'm excited to try it. Thank you. Last question in wrapping up. We've talked about a lot of the dietary components again. Any other big ones we should bring to everybody's attention here before we close?
Dietary.
Yeah, we've talked about the meat, the plants, the kefir, now the meat stock. I just want to make sure for completeness we don't miss any of the big ones before we close. Any other components of the diet?
Well, the fermented foods are very important in the diet, and the meat stock is very important. Cooked vegetables are good as well because they're easy to digest and they feed the gut flora nicely. Eggs. I would have eggs on a daily basis. Eggs are the brain food. It's the best breakfast food. And an adult should have 3 eggs minimum per day. Minimum. I would give a child 3 eggs per day. And the yolk should be kept raw. The white should be cooked a little bit. Eggs are best when they're eaten raw. But the white is not so pleasant for many people to eat. So soft-boiled eggs or fried with the egg yolk left runny. That's the best breakfast food. And if you have some bacon with it, or you have maybe a kippa, an oily fish, a piece of salmon or something else with it, and a little helping of fermented vegetables or a tomato or a cucumber, you've got a beautiful, drizzle olive oil all over. You'll have a beautiful breakfast.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, Dr. Natasha. We're going to link up your books, your website, your social media, everything in the show notes. Thank you for this.
That's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Now that you're done, you're going to want to stick around here and catch this other incredible episode. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you over there.
The upper fermenting gut is a major, major problem. It goes almost unrecognized by the conventional doctors. We have to get rid of the upper fermenting gut. And yes, there's a two-pronged approach. Yes, we starve them out with a low-carb ketogenic diet. And second,